The name of this seminar is to sell or not to sell. I think there's a lot of people out there wondering, whether they should sell, whether they not should sell. Did I miss the window? Did I miss the time? Is it the wrong time? Should I wait for, some other, big rise in prices? Like, what should I do right now? So I want to educate folks that are homeowners. I've been in Orlando for 38 years, so I understand Central Florida very, very well. I've been in the industry 22 years. So I've got a good background on this. And, real estate's one of those things that, if you figure out the timing of real estate, you can win, right? Most people do not figure out the timing, which is why they get, they buy at the wrong time or they sell at the wrong time. So my goal with this is to give you a strategy, no matter who you are, no matter if, it's time for you to sell or not time. You should know what's going on in the market. You should know also, what you should do based on your goals. So the three things that we're really going to talk today was give you a nice overview of the real estate market. I'm very fortunate to be a part of some high level mastermind groups. And, we really track the real estate market because our group invests in real estate. And the cool thing about real estate is that there's indicators, right? There's things that tell you, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. This is what you can expect. So it lets us time it. It lets us do the right things at the right time. We're going to talk about why you should or shouldn't sell depending on your goals. Like I said, it's not for, everybody doesn't have to sell right now. We'll figure out who that person is. But I do believe that if you're even considering about selling or considering selling anytime soon, you should consider now. But you will see through the facts and the evidence that I will present that, hey, this could be the time to sell, right? So, and then finally, I like to go over the four things I believe sell the house for the fastest and the most money. I think that there's a lot of, misperception about, what truly sells a home, what sells it for the most and the fastest. And, everybody's got ideas on that, but, having experience for 22 years, I do believe that I kind of narrowed it down to the four main things, which are very important. Okay. So let's start with the market. Okay. And by the way, this will be, I'll try to keep this to about 30 to 40 minutes. I'll try to go through this quick, and then we'll do question and answer with you guys if you have any questions about this. But everybody's question is, how's the market? What's going on in the market right now? And it's a very, very interesting market. I can tell you that I'm part of very high level mastermind groups, and almost all of them will agree that this is not your typical cycle, right? There's been some things that have happened in the past 2 to 3 years that are very different, right? They're not the typical, like, oh, it's just typical inflation. There's typical, market cycles. It's like, there's been some weird stuff going on. Maybe you guys have heard of some of these things, right? So what's been going on? So number one is, I call it the pandemic push. You guys remember when the pandemic first happened? When it first hit, I was kind of frozen. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen with real estate, right? And a lot of people, and I know some very, very smart investors that literally pulled all their money out of the real estate market, right? They were lending on real estate. They were doing all sorts of stuff. And they're like, freeze. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. Well, kind of the opposite happened, right? People started thinking to themselves, maybe I want to live somewhere different. Maybe I need more space. I want to get out of here. I want to move to a different location. And real estate really started to move. And in Orlando in particular, a lot of people, started buying real estate. So we got a push. We got like a push just initially that we thought we didn't get. We thought we were going to get hit. But on top of that, a couple other things happened. Number one is government money. The government started putting money into the system, right? Very cheap money or easy money, right? From the SBA loans to the money they were handing to people for they couldn't work or whatever the case may be. So basically, you got this push from the pandemic. You got a bunch of government money that starts flooding the market. So people are now have some cash in their pocket, right? And then what else? Then they lower interest rates, right? Then they say, okay, not only there's a lot of money circulating, not only are we getting this pandemic push, but now we're going to make money super cheap to borrow, right? So what does that do? I believe that created kind of the perfect storm, right? It created a massive demand. All these folks that maybe previously couldn't afford a home now can afford it. They got money, they got low interest rates, they can afford the payment, and suddenly everybody starts rushing into this market. and they start pushing values up, right? And that's what's happened over the past 3 years. That's why you've seen this surge. And most of you guys know this. If you're in the real estate industry, or even if you're just a homeowner, you understand that this is what's been happening. Okay. Now, me being an industry professional, I've also been seeing some things on the ground. So, as the market got pushed up last year, around this time was kind of when things started to peak. If you would have sold at around this time last year, or at least put your house on the market around this time last year, I believe you were kind of at the peak of that push, the peak of that equity build, right? And since I'd say August to September, starting through October, things started to settle down for multiple reasons. One, most of you guys know, interest rates started to go up. So demand started to go down. People can't afford the houses they used to afford. The payments have gotten higher. People started to back off a little bit, right? And I think there was a lot of talk also of recession and things like that. And people were like, hey, man, maybe this is not the time to make a move. Things are starting to get too expensive. Maybe that house that was 350 is now 450. And people started to get a little bit tentative. So the market started to soften. Okay. Now, at the beginning of this year, what I felt was last year, everybody was very, very scared towards the end of the year. And then the buyers kind of after the first of the year were like, okay, the whole world didn't burn. Okay, we can start buying again. So you've seen an upswing. I could tell you, in my company, in my organization, that production has gone up in this first quarter. Okay, that's a good thing. And I think that there's something that has also helped us. Okay, so I believe that there's a window, right? If you guys know, this market's going cycles. I believe there's a window to sell at the right time, depending on your situation, right? And I believe that if we didn't live where we lived, that window would have started to close a lot faster. Okay, so the window for you to sell would have closed faster, and you might have seen bigger dips in your equity if it wasn't for this one thing. What's the thing I'm talking about? It's called in-migration. Okay, now I'm not talking about immigration. I'm talking about in-migration. What does that mean? That means a lot of people are moving into our state. Okay, so if you guys haven't noticed, if you look at this map, the red states are the states that people are moving out of. The ones in the darker blue are the states that people are moving to. So I believe that we've kept our window open and will continue to keep it open for a little bit longer than most markets, because we're getting a lot of in-migration. There are a lot of people that are moving to our state because they don't want to be in the cold, because after the pandemic in New York, they were like, I'm done with this, because California, taxes are high and their prices were out of control. Okay, but I will tell you that doesn't mean that we're not going to experience some trouble in the future. Okay, that's not what that means. I just believe that the window is being held open a little bit longer for us here in Florida and in Central Florida. Okay, so let's take a look at what markets look like. And what I love about this graph is that it's actually marked by emotions, because this is kind of how markets go and how prices go. They're based on emotion. Now, they're based on market factors, but it also depends on how people feel about what's going on in the market, right? So you have to look at this graph, right? And you've seen this pandemic push. You saw the easy money coming into the market. You saw the interest rates that were super low and now are starting to raise up. And I think even here in Central Florida, prices have dropped. I'm just telling you, they haven't dropped as much. So you got to look at this market cycle and ask yourself, are we here? Are we here? Are we here? Right? Where are we in this market cycle? Okay. I tend to believe that the peak, as I told you, was kind of last year, mid last year, right? Where things were super, super hot. I believe we might be somewhere in this range here. So what are you saying to yourself at this point? It's like, okay, where am I at, right? What should I do with my home if I believe that Bobby's correct, that last year when things peaked with all these things happening, that I'm right here in this market cycle? what should I be thinking about? If I'm thinking about selling or not thinking about selling or whatever the case may be. Now, one thing that my mentors and my investment mentors taught me that I thought was really, really interesting was, a lot of people, when you ask them the question, what's the most important thing when it comes to investing in real estate, right? What's the most important thing? And by the way, I'm talking about investing because, your home is an investment. And I know that the reason that you might be on this call or you might be listening to this is because you're wondering whether it's time to sell or not, because it's about the money, right? You're saying, how much am I going to gain? How much equity am I going to gain in my property? Right. And I remember my mentor saying, do you guys know the number one rule of real estate investing? And, you've heard them all, right? Buy low, sell high. You make your money when you buy, you don't make your money when you sell. Like, you heard all that stuff. And this is what he said. It's timing. That's the number one rule of real estate investing. This is a guy who's worth 100 million, by the way, who's been doing this now for years, has made millions of dollars through not only buying and flipping properties, but through private lending. And when he said timing, things really started to click, because what he started to say is, hey, look, you could be the type of person that says, I'm going to buy a property, now and hold it for 30 years and ride this market out, right? And you're going to gain equity in your property. But how long did it take you to get that equity and that money? So if you bought 30 years ago, yeah, your property would be worth a lot more now, but divide your returns over 30 years and you realize you didn't kill it. I mean, you might have done well. Like, don't get me wrong. If you're an investor out there and, you bought a property every single year, doesn't mean you don't have more money than most, but you would have done really well if you would have learned to buy here and sell when it got up here. You would have been way more wealthy because you would have understood that this is how markets go. And if you buy at the right time and sell at the right time, you can repeat this and you make so much more money in a short period of time if you know what to do with the timing. And the beautiful thing about real estate, it's one of the very few investments that you can time, because it doesn't move like a stock moves or something else, right? Like you can, or crypto, like how much, I had a bunch of friends out there that a few years back suddenly became crypto experts. They do something totally different, and they were telling me, oh, buy this, buy that, and then they lost it all, right? And it's just like, well, that's because you don't understand what's happening with crypto. You can't time that market. It's just like even stock on a day-to-day. That's why they tell you to have a diversified portfolio in stocks. Why? Because stocks go up and down every day, but if you diversify over a 10, 20-year period, you should get a decent return. Like, that's why they tell you to do that, because you have no idea why that, particular company just shot up, $10 today, right? A share. With real estate, it's different. With real estate, it has market indicators, affordability indicators. And let me tell you something that, my mentor is like, look, I look at the entire country. Now, by the way, they spend about $100,000 a month researching the real estate market because they're not trying to guess. They operate from zip code to zip code and whatever the case may be. But the one thing that always stuck out to me that he said was, as California goes, so does the rest of the country. So usually if something's going to happen in this country, it starts in California first, right? And by the way, California is one of the biggest economies, even just as one state, than a lot of countries, right? So as California goes, so does the rest of the country. And the reality is that this country right now has some affordability issues, right? People can't afford, people aren't getting paid more, right? And the price of owning a home or mortgages or mortgage payments are becoming a higher percentage of people's monthly income. So these are indicators that over the last 4 or 5 bubbles, let's say, that you would call them, were things that you knew once it hit a certain affordability level that you knew that something was going to occur. Now, this is nothing to be scared of. It's something to anticipate and know, especially if you're a seller. Okay. And that's what I'm here to do, is to educate you so that you understand that there could be volatility coming in the market, but we're still in a place right now where you have this window to sell. Okay. So to sell or not to sell. Okay. If you're an agent, if you coach with me, you know the answer to most things. It depends. It just really depends on your situation. So I'm gonna talk to you about some reasons that you might not want to sell, right? You might not want to sell. So here's some reasons you might not want to sell. You don't have a strategy. You don't actually have a plan for after you sell, right? Some people are like, oh, I'm scared, I want to sell, I'm sell right now, prices are high, but then they realize they can't afford the next place, or they don't really have a plan for the next place or what to do with the money, and they're just kind of like stuck in nowhere land. There's not a plan. You haven't thought about it and said, hey, here's what's going to happen next. This is why I'm doing it. There's not a real strategy. So selling just to sell isn't a smart strategy. Number two is if you're worried or fearful. If you're just selling because you're worried or fearful, like, look, market cycles happen. That's the way it is. But being scared ain't a great reason on its own, right? And so as long as you're going to stay in your property for a certain period of time, right? So because we know that market cycles go like this, you shouldn't be worried or fearful if you're going to stay in your property for a while. I personally believe, I've been in Orlando for 38 years. Orlando's a hot place, and not just weather-wise, but it's a hot place. People like it. The tax situation in our state is strong. We've got tourist attractions. We've got medical field here. We got a lot of stuff going on here, and I firmly believe that the long-term trajectory of Orlando is up, right? But you're still going to see dips. That's normal. That's a market. That's a market cycle. So my thing is, hey, if you plan to be here for 5 more years, don't sell because you're scared, because I believe in 5 years from now, we're going to still be in a good spot or back to a good spot. Okay. So don't just sell because you're scared. Maybe you're location bound. What I mean by that is you have to stay where you're at for some particular reason, right? You can't actually move because your kids go to the school district, right? So if your kids go to the school district, unless you can find something that you want in the same school district or whatever the case may be, maybe it's not time for you to sell, right? Because your kids are still young. They have to stay there. That's fine. Hey, like I said, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, even if we experience some dips in the market, I believe that there will be a rebound. So nothing to worry about if you're bound by the location or if you're just price bound, so it could be a situation that where you want to live next, but you can't afford that place right now, or whatever the case may be, or you can't find what you want in the spot that you want for the price that you want, whatever it is. If you just can't find it right now and you're fine where you're at, then stay where you're at. There's nothing wrong with that. There's reasons for people not to sell. And these are just some of those reasons, right? All that being said, if you're thinking at all about selling, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, I'm listening to this because I'm contemplating selling. Okay. So here's some factual data that you should know. Just based on timing of the year. This has nothing to do with the market cycle. That what I talked to you about before is the timing of the market cycle. Okay. This is just traditionally in real estate. These months you see right there that are outlined in that yellow box are the best months to get the most money for your property. It's the best time to sell. It's where the most demand is. Okay. A lot of people want to be in that place by summer, make sure their kids get settled in before school starts next year. It's just a hot time in the year for you to sell your home. So if you're thinking like, should I wait till, September? According to this chart, probably not. If you're thinking about selling now, you should be putting that house on the market as soon as possible. Okay. That's just in general. That's not talking about the cycle. But let's go back to it. Let's go back to the market cycle and ask yourself, where do you think we are? You might disagree with me as to where we're at. Like I said, I'm part of mastermind groups. There's, I remember we were talking about this a year and a half ago. We were talking about a market cycle and a market shift a year and a half ago because we were looking at certain indicators. I remember my mentor saying, 14 out of the 20 indicators to show there's going to be a downward turn in the economy and the real estate market have already hit. So, and since then they've been kind of stacking up. So it's nothing to be scared about. What I've realized is, and just so you guys know, I got caught in the last cycle because I was 27 years old. I owned a home at the time. I had a lot of debt and I wasn't prepared for a market cycle, and I got hit and I lost money and I lost my house and I lost. But I didn't leave that experience with like, oh my God, I'll never invest in real estate again. It left me with the experience of like, oh, what if I could have timed this? What if I did the smart things at the right time, right? Because I got hit, but what ended up happening is a lot of people got rich because when things went back down to clearance prices, they bought and they were in the position to buy. And that's very, very important. Being in the position to buy. And we're in this very unique time where if you sell your property and get the capital from your property, you could be putting yourself in a really good position to buy. Okay. It's just an interesting time in the market. But once again, look at this and you guys tell me or tell yourself in your mind, where do you think we're at? Now, very few people I think would say, well, we're at the top because they've already felt the softening. But even if you think we're here, do you think there's going to be another shoot up? Like, is this going to shoot back up again to a new high price level for at this point? I don't know. What I'm thinking is that we're somewhere around here, and regardless of whether you agree with me or not, I believe that there's more downside than upside when you're here, right? So, but if you own a home, you've still got the advantage of the pandemic push. See, your home wouldn't be worth what it's worth right now if those three things I explained earlier didn't happen, just so you know. If you had experienced a normal market where your price was going up 3% a year or whatever the case may be, a very, very steady growth, okay, you would not have the equity you currently have in your home because of those weird things that happened in the market. So that's what you have to understand. What you understand is right now you're still winning. You're still winning by a lot. But you got to ask yourself, how long will this window stay open? And that's the whole point of this seminar and this strategy is if you're even thinking about selling, where you think you're at in this market cycle and how long do you think this window is going to be open? Okay. And I believe that if you're even thinking about it, now would be the time. But here are some reasons, right? Number one, you have a plan. So if you've been right now, if you're actually thinking to yourself, hey, I'm ready to downsize. I've been ready to downsize. Like, should I sell my house now? Yes. You have a plan. You already know what you want to do. Oh, hey, I've already locked up my next place in North Carolina. That's where I'm retiring to, like all this stuff. Now's a good time to sell. You have a plan. You know where you're going to next. And you have the opportunity to take advantage of this abnormally increased equity over the past 3 years. It's abnormal. It's not normal what's happened. That's why a lot of my mentors are predicting the downshift, because when not normal things happen, they cannot sustain, right? They have to shift back down to the median. They have to shift back down to normal. And when it does that, it could happen when that corner turns, it could happen very fast. It could happen very, very, very quickly. Okay. So you have a plan. You know what you're doing next. Okay. Maybe you want to invest. Okay. This to me is my main goal right now, me personally. Right. So when me and my mastermind group were talking about the fact that this shift was coming in the market, I immediately went into urgency mode and thought to myself, oh my gosh, I got to stack capital right now. I have to start putting money away in the bank. I have to start figuring out, maybe I have to sell some properties to get some more money. Whatever it is, I was thinking to myself, Lord, please allow me to be ready the next time there's a shift in the market, because there will be a shift. Market cycles are market cycles. Remember, I got caught in the first one, but I saw a lot of people who capitalized on it. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I want to be ready to capitalize on this. And so guess what? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to, if you're listening to this, this could be your investment properties. Should you sell your investment properties? Yes, because if they have a crazy amount of equity, what we're going to do is we're going to wait till it goes back. We're going to take that equity and we're going to wait till things get back to clearance prices. And then we're going to put the money back into the market, right? But remember when I talked about timing and outsized returns, when you know when to get in and when to get out, this is what I'm talking about. So let me give you an example of this, okay? Once again, you could have bought a property a year for 10 years, 30 years ago, and then rode it all the way out. But if you would have bought it at the right time at each market cycle, you would have probably had 1,000% return more on your property. Why is that? Because let's say I currently had 10 homes and I had gained, let's just say $100,000 worth of equity, just to keep the number simple, because I'm not a mathematician here. So let's say I gained about 100 grand worth of equity on those 10 homes. If I sold those 10 homes right now, I'd have $1 million to invest. What happens when you do that and you have a bigger chunk of money to invest, you can start playing in bigger games, right? I think of it like gambling. You get to sit at a different table with a different entry. But what that means is you can win bigger now, right? Because if you held on to those 10 properties and made your $500 a month net, it'll be nice. But guess what you can do when you cash all that equity out with $1 million? Well, now you can buy, a $4 million commercial building or apartment complex that suddenly replaces your yearly income. You literally wouldn't have to work if you bought that property, but you ain't going to do that with your 10 rentals making 500 net a month. Does that kind of make sense? Like, it allows you to play those games. And if we know that there could be a shift in the market, I want you to cash out your capital and be ready if you're that person. Okay. So this is just, like I said, that one's near and dear to me because I'm an investor myself. Okay. I think you should want to sell if you were thinking about selling in the next 12 to 24 months. I believe there's a big question mark as to what's happening next 12 to 24 months. Big question mark. But is it really? Because if I believe that we're here, it could take longer than we think, but we're in a cycle. And if I believe that there's going to potentially be a larger downside, then hey, if I'm thinking about selling the next 12 to 24, you might want to speed up your timeline. Okay. I don't want you to get caught in the middle of something. Okay. And once again, this is not a fear tactic. There's a lot of things going on, but the indicators with inflation, affordability, they're there. And that's not even to talk about some of the other world matters that could happen, that could shift things, so if you have an opportunity right now, it's kind of like, hey, you're in a position right now where, hey, if you were thinking in the next 12, 24 months, but things are still good and you've got the advantage of the equity from the pandemic push, move up your timeline. Okay. And the last one is that you're flexible. Like I'm an interesting individual because I don't have a wife and kids. I can actually move around, and if I was like, hey man, like I might not be here at this my location forever. And right now I got massive equity on my property. And I even whether I have a specific strategy or not, I'd rather have capital in my pocket because I'm flexible. I'll take my $100,000, $200,000, $250,000, put it in my bank and wait for good things to come my way, right? And I'm just going to rent. I'm just going to go rent an apartment. By the way, I've thought about that a million times myself. Like, I've got this great condominium in downtown Orlando. I love it. The location is fantastic, but 100 times I thought about like, you know what? I might just sell this thing and go rent for a while because I want the capital. I want the equity that's in here. Okay. FYI, there's other ways to get the equity out if you do want to keep your property. So if you talk to real estate professional, they can help you with home equity lines or whatever the case may be. In my case, I've thought about it a million times. I think I'm staying, I went the home equity line route, but if you're flexible, this could be for you, right? You killed it on your property. Don't waste the gains if we feel where we're at in the market cycle. Okay. So let's talk about how to sell your house in 2023 for the most money, and not just the most money, but fast. Okay. Which by the way, it's really hard to sell your property for the most money slow. So they kind of go hand in hand. I was talking to some agents today. My goal with every listing is I want this under contract in 2 weeks because I know what the truth is. I know if this property hangs out on the market, it gets less sexy every single day it's on the market. Every single day it's on the market. What is one of the first things that a real estate agent, which is who sells most of the properties in this country, are real estate agents, what's the first thing they look at in a listing? Days on market. How long has it been on there? How aggressive? They actually base how aggressively they will make your offer, how aggressively low they will make it based on how many days it's been on the market. I can tell you, I do it. If I see the property's been on the market for 45 days and I know things been selling way faster than that, I'm like, oh my gosh, these people might be getting desperate. There might be something wrong with the property, whatever the case may be. So you want to be able to sell your home fast because the longer it lingers on the market, the less appealing it is. And the more reasons people think that you might be getting desperate or there's something wrong, right? So you have to make sure you do the right things. And there's 4 things, okay? I've been in this game now 22 years. And cool thing is that as just, the technology that's out there, and how savvy real estate agents are now, there's a lot of different ways to market your property. There really is. But the reality is that there's 4 foundational principles that I believe will sell your property for the most and fastest. And every agent, every person you work with should be focusing on these 4. If you don't get these right, you're going to be playing, you're going to be playing catch up. You're going to be behind the 8 ball. You're going to be, trying to polish this, not to be crude, but polish the turd. Like you're just, you're just making up instead of doing it right from the beginning. Right? You have to do these 4 things right from the beginning. Okay. Number 1 is presentation. Okay. The presentation of the property has to be right from the beginning. For instance, there's people that are like, oh, my renter's going to move out in a month, but let's list it now. No, we're going to wait a month because your renter is going to make this hard to sell. They got all their crap in there. It's going to be hard to show, bad presentation, right? Or the house is, hey, we're in the middle of remodeling something. Presentation's bad, right? But those are extreme cases. Presentation to me is, what does this property look like, right? You're looking at a picture right now of what I consider kind of a model home style. Now, of course, not everybody's home looks like this with the marble and the wood or whatever. But what you got to realize in a picture like this, or if you've ever been to a builder's model home, is you don't see a bunch of family pictures everywhere. You don't see a bunch of appliances on the kitchen counters. You don't see a bunch of clutter in there. Why? Because they want this thing to look like a home you'd want to be in. That is your home, right? Not somebody else's home that you're going to have to kind of envision in your mind to be yours. I want people to envision themselves in your home. I want people to walk into this house and say, this could be my home, or I don't have to kind of be like, I don't like that, but I think I can make it work. That kind of sentiment will cost you $10,000 right there. Just them saying, I don't know about that. Just that. Just that little feeling could cost you money. So let me talk to you about presentation and what I believe that you should be focusing on. And by the way, if you're a seller out there and you want to sell the home on your own, this is for you too, right? I don't have a problem with somebody trying this, but it is a lot of work and you gotta be on it. Okay. So here's the thing. Here's what I mean by presentation. So number 1, let's talk about curb appeal. Curb appeal is, what does somebody see right when they pull up? Okay. Curb appeal. What's the feeling that I get when I pull up? Right. So this just came up the other day on a listing. There was like an oil stain in the driveway. Okay. If you're a homeowner out there and you got an oil stain in the driveway, please pay a couple $100 to get that pressure washed and get out of there, whatever it takes. Why? Because that little stain is the first thing that they see. It's a representation of what they believe they're going to see inside the house, which is somebody who doesn't care enough to clean shit up. Like, that's what they're going to think before they even step in the front door. Okay. What about grass cut? Okay, you walk, you come up and the grass isn't cut, right? And the grass is outgrown. What do you think? Well, if they don't care about the grass, they didn't care about this house. So I'm about to walk into this house and there's going to be all sorts of, even if I don't see what's wrong with it, in my mind, something's going to be wrong because these people don't care. They're just going to leave their grass grow. They're going to leave that oil stain there. It could be something as simple as, a little wood rot on the front door. Just think to yourself, what are people going to see right when they pull up? And if it doesn't feel good to you, it ain't going to feel good to a buyer. We got to get this taken care of. So if I'm talking to a seller, I'm very, very direct about what needs to be done, not only prior to listing, prior to me getting a professional photographer out there. All these things must be done before I bring a pro photographer to take pictures of this home. Because once again, I don't want him to take, or her to take 50 pictures and I can only use 10 of them because there's all this, most of them are crappy because the curb appeal is wrong or whatever the case may be. Repairs, okay? Obviously major repairs have to be addressed, things like that. But when it comes to presentation, a lot of times what I see is people just neglect little things. Let me give you an example. I walked into my friend's garage. I was listing the property for him, and there was a little stain on the ceiling that looked like there was a roof leak. Everybody knows what a roof leak stain looks like, right? Or some kind. It might not even be a roof leak, but it doesn't matter. Like, let's say it wasn't a roof leak, but guess what? Every buyer's going to think it is. So there's a major problem there. So I talked to him. I was like, hey, what's that? If I'm saying what's that, that means a buyer's going to say, what's that? Okay. And the answer can't be, oh, I'll explain it away, because they'll never believe me. Oh, that's fine. That happened before. It's all fixed. Yeah, but I saw that stain though. That'll never leave the mind of that buyer. So I walked into his garage. I saw a stain. I asked him, what's happened here? Don't worry. He said, don't worry about it. I just got a brand new roof on this property. That happened in the last, hailstorm or hurricane, whatever. Insurance, covered my entire roof. It's done. I was like, yeah, but that needs to be painted over. Like, I can't put this on the market with that little stain there, because every single person that walks through is going to talk about that stain. Okay. Can't happen. And then the realtor's going to ask me, and I'm going to start, explaining things away, and they won't believe me. And I'll be like, man, that could have cost me a contract. It could cost you thousands of dollars. And all you had to do was dip that paintbrush in some white paint and paint it over. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating that. I'm telling you right now that they will offer you $5,000 less because they have that feeling in their mind that something could be wrong with the property, and they want to have some insurance in there, when all it was an old stain. So do not take these things lightly. Declutter. Okay. So a lot of people have a lot of stuff, right? So even if you're not a full-fledged hoarder, some people just have a lot of furniture, and they have a lot of pictures, and they have a lot of stuff. Remember that picture I showed you of the first picture that I showed you, right? This is super clean, like not a lot of stuff around, some nice details, but it's a wide open space and you can see it. So decluttering is huge because it opens up the space. Decluttering is huge because when you get rid of the pictures on the shelves that are all of your family, people can now see their own family there. If not, if I'm looking at you have that big old wall with all these family pictures, it's like, so declutter, put stuff in boxes. I always talk to potential sellers and say, hey, look, what can we pack up? Matter of fact, if they can move out first, the best thing you can do as a seller is have a vacant house, right? So now we don't have to deal with any of that. Nice, vacant, clean house, best way to sell. Okay. If we can't do it that way, then let's move some of this stuff out of here. Okay. You as and if you're, it's funny because agents sometimes feel bad talking to a seller about certain stuff because some of the stuff is personal. Like I might walk in and be like, oh, that rug's got to go. And they were like, oh, my grandmother gave me that rug. I understand, but my job is to sell your property for the most and fast. And that rug covers up this beautiful floor. I want people to see it. And I know a lot of people, it means a lot to you, but to somebody, they might just be like, man, they might not see it. So you have to be very direct about that. So declutter, pack up as much stuff. If you can't go somewhere else, put it in your garage, box it all up. You don't need that fourth couch, like get that out of there, make the home look like a model home. Depersonalized, we talked about that. That has a lot to do with pictures and things like that. How about clean and deodorize? It's like, man, when a place feels clean and when it smells clean. And so, I'll tell a seller directly, like, hey, well, one, we got to get this place cleaned up. Number two is, I know I love your dogs, but you can smell like, a lot of dog hair, whatever the case. We got to figure out what to do to make sure that somebody doesn't walk in and either smell that or say or have even have to deal with, like, what we have to have a strategy for the dog. Some people might be allergic, so these are all things that you need to think about that will get you more money if you do them in advance. Professional pictures, everything that I'm telling you guys needs to be done prior to a professional photographer getting out there. So you're going to want to have professional photos taken of the property, but you can't have it all cluttered. You can't have it all looking bad when they come through. You need to think like, how do I make this look like a model home? Yes, that means you're going to take the coffee. I want the coffee maker off of the counter. I want that dirty dish rag off. Hey, that bathroom needs to have matching towels and whatever everything needs to look right. Hey, I know the kids' rooms all over the place with that thing. You need to make that room look as clean as it's ever looked, before these professional photographers get out here, and hopefully keep it that way throughout the sale. The other is the MLS. So if you're a seller out there listening to this, one of the most powerful tools that agents have is the MLS. Why? Because this is where other real estate professionals go to exclusively look at properties real time and selling. So this is where people actually who have qualified buyers go to find property. But here's the deal. Even though all real estate agents get the MLS, a lot of them might not know how to use them properly. And you'll see these mistakes all the time. The pictures are terrible. They present it, the descriptions are terrible. They're not doing the right things with the listing. So just because you think that somebody has the MLS, because I know there's a lot of services out there that be like, oh, just give us like $350 and we'll slap it on the MLS for you. That'll ruin your first impression too, just so you know. I don't know how many times I've seen a presentation on the MLS of a home and I thought to myself, wow, they just cost that person 20 grand, 30 grand, like right off the rip. Nobody's going to see that house. And that house had potential. It's just nobody going to see it because it just looks bad. Everything looks bad. The description is bad. The pictures are bad. Sometimes it's like one picture. Sometimes it's a terrible picture with an agent sitting there in the mirror of the bathroom shooting it with their phone and looking all terrible. Like not going to help. Or including pictures that don't help. At the end of the day, I want a buyer to come see your house. I don't want to, even if there's some parts of the home that might not look as good. Hey, if that picture doesn't help you sell it or get somebody excited about going to see it, I'm leaving it off the listing. They need to come see it in person so that they can be like, oh, okay, I really love this home. Actually, it's just this one thing and I can handle that, or I can fix that. The last thing I want them to do is look at a bunch of extra pictures and think to them and send us. That's not even worth going to look at. Okay. All right. My favorite subject when it comes to selling your house for the most and the fastest. It's the pricing. It's the thing that real estate agents get the most scared about to talk with a seller about. It's the one thing that they just, man, when we get to this part, it's going to be tough. It's really not that tough because the facts are the facts about this. Okay. The number one thing that will lose a seller money is pricing the property improperly, right? And what that means is pricing it too high and killing demand and killing attention, okay? People seem to think that if they price something over market or based on whatever they're feeling, You know, I've heard so many times the seller say, well, I'm not taking anything less than X. I mean, you don't actually make that decision. You know who makes that decision? It's the market. The value of your home is dictated by the market. What are people willing to pay for it? The funny part is if a seller comes to you and says, like, I won't take anything less than this, and you were to ask them if they would buy the property for that price, they'd probably tell you no. Oh, I would never buy it for that price. But I think I'm going to find somebody here to overpay for it. No, you won't. Investors are the worst actors when it comes to this, by the way. I don't know how many investors I've had that want to overprice the property when they know their whole formula as an investor is not to overpay. So, but let me tell you why this costs a seller so much money. Okay. It's because what you get paid for your property depends on demand and attention. And the other portion is, so if you overprice it, you think, oh, okay, I'm going to price it up here because I really know that somebody might not pay me this, but they'll come in down here and then I'll meet them somewhere in the middle and I'll still get more. It's not how it works. What happens is you overprice it, right? So let's say somebody's qualified for $500,000 and you say, yeah, but I put in a gold sink, and so mine should be worth 550. Okay. So you put it on for 550. Well, everybody who's qualified for the right price, which is 500, won't see your home pop up in any searches. Like, when realtors present them with all the homes, they're going to present them homes they can afford. So your 550 home isn't popping up on the search, although 500 is actually the right price. That's where you would have gotten action, competition, and you would have gotten multiple contracts, that you would have gotten some leverage, but you decided to overprice it. So then what happens is your property sits. And by the way, a lot of times an agent will have told you that 500 was the right price. They gave in to your 550 price, right? And then the agent's going to do what agents hate to do, which is come back to the seller and say, I think we need to lower the price. Okay. But the sad part about that is there's a couple things. Number one is you've already wasted your first impression. That property was the strongest the first second of the first day that it hit the market. That's when that property was the strongest. That's when it was the sexiest. That's when you would have gotten the most demand. But you wasted your first impression. That's number one. Number two is now you look weak. Okay, because if I lower the price over time, I'm basically saying, okay, you got me. We went head to head and I'm backing down, right? So now you start backing it down. So now realtors and buyers are thinking to themselves, hey man, they're looking kind of weak right now. Maybe we can offer them even less than that, because now they're backpedaling and we're losing leverage every single day we spend on the market. We lose leverage every time we lower that price. Okay. And even worse than that is you might have actually had to sell within a time frame. You might actually be getting desperate because you actually had a time frame to sell, but you wanted to gamble on an overprice instead of putting it at a price where you get maximum attention. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay. And this is the misconception. Okay. So when you look at this, if you're looking at this orange line right here, this is market value, right? And by the way, this is an art and a science when it comes to this. You want to work with somebody who knows their stuff and be able to really gauge what is the right price for this market. But look at what happens when you overprice. So if this is the market value, right, the percentages you see here dictate how much attention you're getting on the property. Okay, look what happens if you're within that 10% below market value. You got 75% more potential buyers looking for your property. Look what happens when you start going into the other side of that line. Now it goes to 60%. You go a little farther up and overprice it some more. Now you're at 30%. Now you go up and overprice it some more, and now you're at 10%. Okay, this is bad because competition and attention are what sells your property quickly and for the most. So you're eliminating the competition. You're eliminating the visibility. Less people are seeing your property. Less people are coming to see it. you're starting to go stale in the market. You're backing down the price. The reality is you rather miss low than miss high. It's really hard to underprice a property, but it's really easy to overprice it. It's really hard to underprice a property. You know why? Because let's say an agent or somebody says, hey, you think it's supposed to be at 550, and they say, no, 499.9. That's where we need to be. And you're like, no, you're gonna cost me so much money. No, they're not. But one, they're using actual data on what's happening in the market to let you know, here's what people are paying for properties in this neighborhood. But what also happens is if you price this right and you get the most attention, and even if you're worried about missing on the low side, the only result from that can be contracts. And let me tell you what the number one leverage builder, and when I say leverage, I mean leverage in negotiations. How am I going to get the most money for my property? You know how you do that? Contracts, multiple contracts, right? So if I miss on the low side of the pricing scale, then the only result should be more than one contract, or at least a contract. You didn't hit it right if you're not getting attention when you put this on the market initially. You didn't hit that right? You didn't hit the price where it should have been. Okay. So as a seller, your fear shouldn't be, oh my God, what if I priced it 10 grand less than it shouldn't be? Don't worry about that. Because if it's a great deal, you'll get multiple offers on that property. And then here's what you can do with multiple offers. You can now start going to all these potential buyers and saying, hey, because you know what the number one question a realtor is going to ask you when they call you up about your property? They're going to say, do you have any written contracts? And that one question right there, if your answer is yes, you've just not put yourself in the driver's seat. That I've suddenly become the leverage winner in this situation. Now that agent is going to report back to that buyer, hey, can't mess around. They got an offer. You want to put in an offer? Matter of fact, just me saying that will probably increase the offer of that buyer. But then what happens is if I am able to get more than one offer, I just put a property on the market the other day, had 5 written offers in 4 days. And between the beginning, my first offers, I was able to drive that price up $30,000. Drive it up $30,000. And even more for some of the other offers. Some of the other offers were lower. I drove that up at least $30,000. Why? Because I had contracts. I had attention. Hey, man, put your highest and best offer in because I've got 3 more here waiting. If you want it, this is where you need to be, or you better not mess around and give me the most money. So this is so important, and I'm harping on this because this is that one. If I look at a listing and I see it's been on the market for a bunch of days, first thing I'm going to look at is price, because that's usually the problem. The problem is it's overpriced. Then I look at everything else. Oh, wow, it's a double whammy. It's presented improperly and it's overpriced. You got no shot. You're going to be on the market. It's going to be 6 months. And then you're going to cancel that contract with that agent. Or if you were doing it yourself, you're going to get an agent because you need some help, right? You need some real help. So this is so important. I don't want you to miss on this point, but all these things have to work together. The third thing is access. Okay. Access to the property. So what I mean by this is you got to let people see it when they want to see it. Okay. It's very, very important. That's why when I talked earlier about a tenant being in the property, it screws this up. It screws up access, because a tenant, you have to work around them and all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you have to do it. You know, the tenant's in there for another 6 months, you have to sell now, no problem. But the main thing you got to talk, like if I'm an agent talking to a seller and they're like, okay, so I'm living here. I only want people seeing this on Wednesdays from 4 to 6. I'd be like, you just cost yourself $30,000. like that, can't do it. No, I'll tell them, I highly would not advise you to do that. You're going to want to let people see this when they want to see it, right? So we're going to work something out. I'm going to have them contact me, and then I'm going to contact you and give you 2 hours notice. And then I need you to leave the house so that they can see it. Because if somebody takes off work that day to go see the home, they're not going to come back if they can't see the home that day. Okay. Make it easy for them to see the home, no matter what they have to do. Make sure that they can see the home. Obviously, like I told you before, vacant homes are amazing. But if it's not vacant, if it's owner occupied, then make sure that if you're a seller or if you're an agent talking to a seller, that you make sure that the access is easy. When it's hard, man, that property's going to sit on the market, and you're going to get a lot less buyers. You just eliminated that funnel, right? That potential buyer there. So please, make sure that the home is accessible. And then finally, I think you should have a savvy agent. Now, the agent could be you. If you're a home seller and you want to try this yourself and you want to follow the plan that I just gave you, I could tell you that it's, a lot of work, but it can be done. Okay. But here's some of the things that, you won't obviously get the marketing tools that an agent will give you. So that's kind of the tough part. It's funny. It's like people want to sell their home on their own, right? But you basically get a bunch of strangers that are coming into your home. It's different when you work with a professional, because only professionals with qualified buyers come and see your home. When you work with a professional, you don't get the marketing that you should, which is going to hurt you on price and how much money you make if you try to sell it on your own. Okay. Unless it's a crazy market. I mean, there was a time, when the market was super crazy, that maybe you could have gotten a good offer on your home by trying it yourself. But here's what you have to understand about a savvy agent. They do way more than you think, right? It's not just like, okay, we're gonna slap this up on MLS and good things are gonna happen. So let me tell you what a savvy agent needs to be doing for you and why it's so important. Okay, so number one is protection. So as I mentioned before, you go for sale by owner and you don't know who's showing up at your door. You don't know who's coming in and checking out your house. When you work with a real estate professionals deal with other licensed real estate professionals. Or if they're working with an individual buyer, they qualify that buyer and they make sure they're there with that buyer in your home. You don't want a bunch of strangers in your house. Trust and believe. But that's just one part of protection. What about protecting you from offers that are not real? People want to submit a contract. Hey, do you have a system for making sure that they're pre-qualified and checking to make sure that they're actually financially viable to buy your home? An agent will do that. Okay. What about protection on the actual contract? There might be things in that contract that you think are no big deal, but they are a big deal. I can tell you right now that, sometimes you get offers from people who are actually fishing to get your property under contract to sell it to somebody else, because that contract, someplace you didn't know that it said that they could flip that property to somebody else, flip the contract to somebody else. These are things that an agent will help protect you against. Okay. Number two is negotiations. And you think, okay, well, there's just one negotiation. There's going to be somebody's going to offer me a price, and then we're going to agree or disagree, and then we're going to fight back, and whatever. That's just part one. Remember that a buyer is going to go through an inspection period. So there's going to be an inspection that's going to be pulled or going to be done. And that means the buyer could most likely come back again and negotiate. They're going to try to renegotiate the price. They're going to try to ask for money for closing costs or repairs or different things like that. You want to have a savvy agent that knows how to combat that knows where we stand in this process, where say, hey, look, we don't have to give in to that. Actually, we can just say no to that. Or, hey, instead of giving them that, let me tell you a better way that'll save you some money. And then we can make sure that the buyer feels secure and we can move forward. There's more negotiations than just the price. Okay. What about appraisals? So if most people are going to get financing, what if an appraisal doesn't come in? What if you get somebody to agree to pay you $500,000 for your house and the appraisal comes in at 480? Then what? Then what happens? What do you do? Is this deal over? What happens? Well, an agent's there to negotiate. Obviously, the agent's going to try to get you the most, but there's another negotiation that happens there. And there's a lot of mini negotiations that happen along the way. Okay. Marketing, I already mentioned, the MLS is one strong way, but everything from digital marketing to open houses to all this stuff, it's a full-time job. I'm gonna tell you right now, like if you're listing a property for a seller, it's a full-time job getting it out there to your list of top agents, getting it out to the inside agents in your own office, making sure that they understand that you have a property ready for sale. Everything from Facebook ads and all that. But once again, the MLS and presenting properties properly on the MLS is so important. If you do all the right things, if you present the property correctly, price it right, and have all the other factors. Follow up. That's another thing that a lot of sellers that want to sell it on their own, they don't realize that they gotta call people all the time, right? Like every lead that comes in, you got to call up and follow up, and then you got to follow up with them again, right? And over again. So these are all things that a savvy agent can do for you. How about coordination? Hey, you know, most sellers might not have a title company. They might not have a lender that'll make sure that they qualify buyers that come in. They don't know the entire process. So coordination with title company, lenders, appraisers, inspectors, all that kind of stuff is what a savvy agent does. And I like this one. How about a non-emotional third party? You know, I'll be honest with you right now, I'm selling a commercial property that I own, and I'm using another commercial agent. Why? Because one, they have a lot of experience in this realm, a lot of contacts. But you know, when you're directly involved, just like you don't represent yourself in court, um, there's a value in having a non-emotional third party, and make sure that you choose an agent that's not an emotional agent, right? Like that knows how to carry themselves and really do business. Because I have seen some agents that are super dramatic and they cause more problems than they help. Okay, but a non-emotional third party says, hey, yo, you're super tied to your home, you lived there for 20 years. Okay, this buyer's buying their first home, they're freaking out. You need people in between to calm situations down and make sure that this thing gets to closing. Okay. And then finally, I want to just give you a little pro tip just for if you're out there and you're thinking about selling your home. Guys, do you know that if you own a primary residence, okay, and you've owned this primary residence for at least 2 years, that you will not pay taxes on your profits on that home if you're a single person, up to $250,000. Okay. If you're a married person and you file jointly, 500,000. So you're telling me that if right now, maybe you have $150,000 worth of equity in your property and you live there for 2 years and a day, guess what? You're paying zero taxes. I can tell you right now that these rates right here, I think are low. I think the total capital gains, long-term capital gains tax is somewhere around 24%. Okay. You know, and so do the math, do the math, take 24% of 250,000, 24% of 500,000. That's like making money. So just understand that if it only on primaries now, okay. So if this is your primary residence and you own this property for 2 years or more, I love that. I can tell you right now, I feel like I've invested in all my primary residences. Every time I cash out of a primary residence that I bought, I'm on my 5th one. I'm like, I can't believe this money's tax-free. It's tax-free, man. I don't have to pay. I just made 100 grand and I'm not paying any taxes on it. Okay. So super, super important. So that's it. That's to sell or not to sell.